You've probably heard people say to not trust your phone or not trust the browser Stockfish because it's not a deep enough engine to really tell you the best move. You have to use a more powerful Stockfish. Well, today we are going to put that to the test by putting Stockfish against Stockfish. With the white pieces, we have the higher rated Stockfish playing against the black pieces, which we're going to use just the browser Stockfish, just what often we see when we play a game on chess.com and we ask it what the best move is. Now, the funny thing is, I actually did this challenge with a really cool opening, the Smith Mora, but it was too drawable, and no matter what side played what, both sides drew. So in this position, this game, I'm going to try the classic engine matchup where you make the engines play an opening against each other that, you know, is kind of known to be a little better for the stronger side. The stronger side is known to be a little better in white, and we're going to see if the better level Stockfish can actually prove it, because if the better level Stockfish played black, they would still find a way to draw. But we're going to see if the better level Stockfish can find a way to actually take advantage of a better position. So both Stockfish agree that it's about plus 0.5 for white, and I will let you guys know. We'll make the moves for both sides. I have a higher level Stockfish pulled up over on the side for white, and I will let you know when the moves greatly vary from each other. And so far, I've been talking and filming the introduction while putting some moves on the board because the computers aren't really making any decisions up to this point. They've just been the standard moves, and black continues to do that by bringing out the lower rated Stockfish says, bring out the bishop here, which is a really standard Scandinavian move. I mean, white going here, or here, or here, kind of depending on what black does next will be kind of interesting, but let's see what white says to do. Yep. So white is going to play one of the most critical lines, which is immediately jumping in with this knight, which if you don't play or play against a Scandinavian, this move looks really, really stupid. You're told to get your pieces out. You have a lead in development. You're like, shouldn't you just keep developing pieces, punish them for their queen? Well, that's kind of the idea. You want to get this knight over here and immediately punish with your knight and your bishops and your bishop. You want to immediately punish his queen placement. So right now, black plays, I think, which is the best move according to most theory, which is simply make a hole. This is seems like a wasted move, but you are simply trying to just make a getaway square for your queen. Now in this position, white chooses to put the bishop here. Once again, it looks like a silly move, but you might see it come to fruition in a second. The idea is you're defending these squares so that if you ever have revealed attacks on the queen, the knights can jump in here, and it's maybe a little unexpected because maybe you thought the knight was going to go there, but, you know, Stockfish plays on its own level. Right. Lower rated Stockfish says, put the pawn out here. This is what you typically do to make sure the bishop isn't hanging in lots of lines. Also, open up a square to get your other bishop out. I would say all this, it's probably literally a position that I have played before. I think I've had this exact position. So, high-rated Stockfish continues to go for the main idea, which is boom, 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 boom. I've been hit by this a couple times as a Scandinavian player, and it sucks. It's so bad because you think, oh, they're going to trap my queen. That's what all this is about. And then, boom, oh, that knight and that work together, and then you realize, oh, I didn't see that coming. So this is an unfortunate part of the Scandinavian that can happen. You are forced to drop your bishop back a square. I mean, you can go forward, but actually I don't know what you're supposed to do. If you go forward, if you're brave, and they just play a pawn move, wow, it just says the castle. I've never actually entered this position. It just says you can castle. But lower rated Stockfish doesn't go for all that. It simply drops the bishop back, and high rated Stockfish continues to play one of the main ideas, which is I really, really, really want to trap that bishop. And here, interesting. Lower rated Stockfish says simply get the knight out to here, which actually high rated Stockfish agrees with as well. I guess you put a little pressure on this knight and you're not afraid of the bishop being trapped because at this point you can still trade things off, I suppose. That is interesting. And high rated Stockfish actually respects the threat and takes the knight. And then lower rated Stockfish takes back. This is lower rated Stockfish. This is not stupid Stockfish. It's not going to take back with the king. So funny enough, it's not a terrible move. It's still like basically equal, but it takes back with the knight and allows the move h5, which, yes, is according to the engine the best move. Looking like it traps the bishop. The bishop makes a run for it to this square, which looks like it just hangs the bishop in one move, but the knight is actually still pinned from the very beginning of the game. And in this position, higher rated Stockfish plays the crazy, the amazing, the unexpected castles. If I ever had to play a Scandinavian game like this, I might start crying. I mean, the idea of bringing the knights around, making threats, all to push the pawns, but then you push all these pawns, and you just castle, you just say, my king's pretty safe, you don't have super easy access, I guess, to these squares. That's all just crazy. Okay. Lower rated Stockfish says, I gotta drop my bishop back because now this actually is a threat, right? Because you now are threatening to take that bishop because there's no longer a pin. So we drop that back. And here, higher rated Stockfish sees a couple moves that it likes. I'm just giving it a second to think and make sure it really likes this move because I want to give it a chance to prove that it's a higher rated engine. So here, since it has a couple, like when it has one move that's by far and away the best, I don't feel like I need to let it think for as long. But here it's actually a little deep in thought, so I'll give it just a second, make sure it likes this move. Yes. It just wants to take the bishop and say, ha ha ha, I had the bishop pair. It looks like you can take back with either pawn, but you really have to take back with this pawn. Taking back with the other pawn just invites too much quick initiative on the king. It just doesn't work. Both Stockfishes agree you can't do that. And a high-rated Stockfish simply wants to drop the bishop back a square and play this position. You would think it would find something super aggressive, try to prevent castling at this point, but it seems like it's not as concerned about that. Maybe just drop the bishop back and say, I have a lot of pressure on this side of the board if you choose to castle that direction. You know, I'd say lower rated Stockfish is actually doing pretty well considering it's playing against its evil big brother, the same Stockfish, but a higher engine. Now, what the lower rated Stockfish thinks the higher rated Stockfish should do, this is actually interesting. This is what I really hope would happen. So, let's check out this position. This seems like the most obvious move. You connect your major pieces on the back row, your king can enter, but this move here, you haven't gotten this bishop out yet, and it's a free hit on the queen. And lower rated Stockfish actually says this is the best move. I mean, it looks like the best move to me. Like, hey, do you want to develop your last minor piece and get a free hit on the queen and also force the queen onto a square because this bishop has all these squares? Basically force the queen onto a less useful square somewhere. Looks great to me. It also thinks sliding a rook to the middle is a great move. That move makes a lot of sense to me. I also think its top three moves make so much sense to me. The top move, though, of the engine, according to the better Stockfish, lower-rated Stockfish does not even consider this one of the top three moves. Let's see what happens to the evaluation. Is to push the A pawn to A4. Alright, it shows the evaluation drops a little bit. Not as dramatic as I was hoping, but it does not understand why this is a good move. It just thinks it's a bad move. And then the lower-rated Stockfish thinks to respond to that, let's break up some of this pawn pressure over here, which the higher-rated Stockfish actually agrees with that move. So, we have the pawn push, then the higher-rated Stockfish simply says, thank you for the square, I will be pushing my pawn down your throat, and hopefully, maybe see some sort of long-term attack, threatening that if you castle long, I mean, I know none of this works right now, but at least some threats. If you castle long, we have some castle short, we have some checkmate ideas, and lower-rated Stockfish, in fact, does castle. So, here we are. Sides have castle on the same side, though it hardly feels like they've castled on the same side. Now we have queen to f3, which is a move we thought would happen much earlier. Lower-rated Stockfish, it tries to stave off the attack with the powerful f5, which sometimes, again, as a Scandinavian player myself, once in a while these moves look really stupid, but they're not really that bad because you're sometimes able to repel a lot of attacks. Rooks can kind of double here, but also help defend these pawns. Normally your queen comes back here at some point and helps out, so it's maybe not quite as dumb as it appears when you first see the move. But higher rated Stockfish doesn't care. It just says, cool. C4. It's like, you're not really going to take me, are you? I mean, right now it looks like you could, but you're not really going to take me, because if you take me right now, what terrible moves it have? Oh, it just simply takes back and says, well, you weakened your king even more. That would be the whole idea. But no, lower rated Stockfish doesn't fall for that. It plays E5. Oh, wait, we gotta go back. While I was talking, it thought and said, you know what? I don't think C4 is the best move. Let's just develop a bishop here. This move is trying to... At first, you might think, wasn't the idea of the pawn to go here, but it probably wasn't. The idea of this pawn long term is probably to take this pawn. So, knight to f6, just like blocking the vision of that bishop, and maybe the long-term prospects of getting the knight to a better square sometime in the future. I mean, it does put pressure on this pawn right now, but according to both engines, the only move in this position is to now take this pawn and not allow your pawn to be captured. And the lower-rated Stockfish wants to take back with the E pawn. I mean, you are breaking apart your pawn structure in a certain sense, but this pawn doesn't... I mean, I'm not calculating anything, but it looks like a hard pawn to defend in the long run. So maybe it's just kind of getting rid of its weakness and building up a nice little pawn chain. So we got to capture here, and then we have bishop. The high-rated Stockfish says the only way to go forward and keep an advantage is to trade off. This is the kind of stuff that Stockfish does that blows your mind. It's like, yeah, I got the bishop pair, but the only way for me to secure an advantage, the only move to keep the advantage in my favor, +1, is to give up the bishop pair and go to an opposite color bishop. It's not an endgame yet, so the opposite colors are not drawable yet. Now, if everything gets traded off, yes, this is a very drawable thing. But, while there's still life in the position, still game to be played, it's not really what you would call a drawable position. Sometimes the opposite color bishops actually help attack because, I mean, right now, black is doing a great job of building up on the light squares, but if white can start attacking on the light squares, in a sense, the defender is down a piece. But you know what? The tables could also turn. And what if black starts attacking and they have the dark squared bishop? All right on cue. I called the move here. White wants to take advantage of the fact that it has a light squared bishop. And this is a pretty cool move because it looks like black could eventually double here. But now you're just taking away one of the squares you can double on. And black in this position simply brings its queen over to up to D2. Interesting. So it doesn't come back and play defense. It says, no. I want to plant a queen deep into your territory. Now, interesting enough, high-rated Stockfish doesn't think this is such a bad move. I guess we'll kind of see what it says. It thinks it is now time to win a pawn with check. Black goes back. You think it's a blunder here, but not really. High-rated Stockfish actually had to do the same move to not try to defend that pawn. The pawn was not worth defending. We'll have to see. I actually don't see lower-rated Stockfish's idea here, but how to... Whoa, yeah, I definitely didn't see the idea. It says, yep, we're going to temporarily go down 2 pawns and then move our rook all the way to G8. So a couple moves ago, I just now mentioned how it was being brave and it was starting to call the shots and push. The tables have turned. Now, it still thinks it's holdable. It still thinks it's 0.5 in white's favor, which is how it started in the Scandinavian. So in a sense, it thinks the position is no worse than when the game started. But it's down 2 pawns. It clearly has some it maybe can win back soon. But it's down 2 pawns and just moved both of its rooks in the corner to try to save checkmate. So it's not looking good. All right. High-rated Stockfish responds with C4 and just in time takes the pawn. What a move. What a move by the lower-rated Stockfish. So you might say, well, of course, if you move your rook in this position, you hang checkmate in 1. You can't do that, right? So you're just moving your queen back here and just say, well, I have to sacrifice a rook, right? So you sacrificed a rook, but you didn't get checkmated. No, because now, if this rook is taken, boom! checkmate on the other side. I did not see that one in this moment. So at this point, the way it defends checkmate is by first moving, allowing the bishop to attack the rook, and then taking the pawn to stop the checkmate, and making your own checkmate threat at the same time. In higher rated Stockfish, shockingly says the only way, the absolute only way to keep an advantage, every other move loses its advantage, it has to offer a queen trade, which of course lower rated Stockfish just accepts. Wow, that is just, I did not expect that. I did not expect that. So all this big skirmish happens. You barely save checkmate. You give up a rook to save checkmate, but threaten your own checkmate at the same time. And then you just trade queens and say, well, queens are traded, let's play an endgame. Well, obviously now, lower rated Stockfish wants to save their rook. They are under quite a bit of trouble though. Don't forget, out of all this, 2 pawns are won, and only one pawn over here was won back. So it's showing 0.5 is still, but at the end of the day, there is a pawn discrepancy here. So we have the powerful move. Oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong engine here. Oh my goodness. Once again, the top move according to this engine is to bring the king. None of the top moves according to the better engine say to do it. The better engine simply says, let's build a pawn chain. Because if you don't know what else to do, you might as well connect your pawns and make sure they all stay defended here. So we got g5. Man, lower rated Stockfish does not want to be messed with. What I've learned about lower rated Stockfish in this video, and also the other one I tried to film that I had to delete because it just ended in draws and was kind of boring, is it does not care to fight. It just pushes its pawns like a maniac and goes for the king. I think it thinks it's always winning. So we have a rook brought to the center here. We are now bringing our king up to the party. Higher rated Stockfish says the best move. Let me let it think here for a second. I need to kind of catch up right now. Higher rated Stockfish thinks it's winning by 0.6. So that's still winning. 0.6 is something. So it says the only way to keep an advantage now. I feel like so many times the lower rated Stockfish has had like 8 moves that keep the evaluation about the same. And the higher rated Stockfish has had to find only moves so many times to keep its advantage. So lower rated Stockfish obviously is a madman and continues to push the pawns at the king. Higher rated Stockfish at this point says I have to respect the threat. I gotta run with my king a little bit. It's getting too dangerous. Lower rated Stockfish says, well, this is why we're here, right? I mean, what are you gonna do? I get it, right? If I was playing this as white, I would be super nervous right now. I think most of us would be super nervous, right? I mean, first of all, you're playing Stockfish. But even if someone said, hey, you're winning by 0.5 right now, you would say, great, but I feel like I'm a while from getting my passed pawn through. It's tough to find good squares to double your rooks on. And, I mean, you have a passed pawn to deal with, a potentially protected passed pawn to deal with in the near future. What are you going to do? Well, higher rated Stockfish says, I'm going to make my own threats. I'm going to start running my pawns. So, of course, lower rated Stockfish says, are you sure about that? Don't I just win your bishop? Oh, guys, this is interesting. Hopefully this is true. Higher rated Stockfish says this is a mistake. It says you need to keep pushing your H-pawn, which this Stockfish says that's a mistake. But this Stockfish says, no, I need to threaten this bishop, which looks smart, right? If you look at this position, you're like, well, if the bishop moves, I just win a pawn, right? And I'm just winning. Well, higher rated Stockfish response to that is to play the uber powerful, take my pawn, bring the bishop, and just say, you can have the extra pawn I want all those turns ago, gives it up, and the lower rated Stockfish says, yeah, I mean, you're giving me a pawn, why wouldn't I take that? And higher rated Stockfish says, yep, I gave you a pawn, but boom, oh, it got the rook off the back rank. to create its own pasture here. So lower rated Stockfish wants to run back and play defense, and I don't blame him right now, but that's when you give up a pawn to get the rook where you can start pushing, and now materials equal, but it just feels a little scarier. It feels a little scarier for this. So, all right, high rate Stockfish wants to play A6. The response to that is E7. A6 is not a move that I'm sure a high rated player like, oh, there's a really good reason for A6, but A6 just kind of seems like a weird move. Like you're potentially freezing your pawns in the future. You feel like you can make a passer, but it must be calculated. No, it can't hold on to that passer in the long run, but it just feels like you should be going for making the pass pawn as fast as possible. But then, ooh, once again, high rated Stockfish is in between a few moves, but it throws, it thought rook for a long time. It wanted to rook here, but then it said, no, I want my bishop on E6, which lower rated Stockfish then plays rook to F8. No, sorry, that was a mouse slip. I said the right square. It does not hang its rook to the bishop in one move. It moves its rook to F8, not to F7. And high rated Stockfish at this point, it's thinking about pushing its pawn. No, not. It's like, bring a rook, push pawn. Bring a rook, push pawn. Bring a rook, push pawn. It can't decide. It just can't decide. Lower rated Stockfish thinks it should just drop its bishop back and defend these squares. Maybe pop a bishop here and try to make a little hard to get rid of problem for the opponent. High rated Stockfish says, I will push my pawn, which lower rated Stockfish takes. And then high rated Stockfish brings its second rook. I think up. It's going back and forth on a few moves. Oh, it just found high rated Stockfish for a split second here. It was like, I'm completely winning. And then it must have found a defensive move because it went away. So now, look how Stockfish plays here. So for a second, high rated Stockfish was up 2 pawns, right? And then it was up 1 pawn. And then it was up no pawns. And now it's down a pawn. And it thinks its advantage is completely gone. That's crazy. It's crazy that it... Okay, let's give it a do-over. So now I'm back in this position. I'm trying to, keep this going. So now it says, now that I've thought about it more, I would like to bring my rook here and attack. Try to win a pawn back. But it's looking more and more... Like I said a while ago, if we trade too many pieces, we run the risk of this just being a draw. And it looks like we might be heading in that direction. I need to make the Stockfish play a little worse apparently. It's just going in, full thrusters ahead. Oh, high rated Stockfish says, yeah, it's just a draw. Unfortunately, it's just a draw. Man, I can't believe it. Hell, that's gotta be a lot of points given to the Scandinavian, because lower rated Stockfish at a depth of often 20 or less just beat much higher rated, not beat, but in this case it beat higher rated Stockfish in the Scandinavian from what he considered a worse position with a much better depth, and it held a draw, which, like I said, that's really a win. It's really a win to hold a draw against a higher rated Stockfish in a position that you were supposed to be worse in. So, wow, 1 point for the Scandinavian.